Prior to very recently, I was not qualified to create the video I am currently creating on how to give a wedding thank you speech as the bride or the groom. However, this year in June 2022, my fiance and I became husband and wife. We had our wedding, and I had to go through the process of writing a thank you speech and delivering it alongside my bride to all of our guests who were there to celebrate our wedding with us. Now I feel that I'm somewhat qualified to deliver this YouTube video, at least giving you my experience, my feedback on the process I took in creating a wedding thank you speech to acknowledge some of our key guests who had either traveled a long way or contributed to the wedding. So I hope this video, if you are a bride or a groom, your wedding is coming up, you are writing this very speech right now, stay tuned till the end because I think it will be helpful for you. I'll give all of the tips and all of the experiences I had to help you out. And by the way, if this is your first time landing on my YouTube channel, I would love it if you subscribed, hit notifications. My goal is to put out a lot of content, whether it's related to wedding speeches, public speaking in general, or even Toastmasters. I produce a lot of content explaining how you can be a better communicator, a better public speaker. So the thank you speech at a wedding is typically the last one delivered by the bride and the groom. Usually there's toasts from the best man or the maid of honor, sometimes a few other speeches from groomsmen or bridesmaids, and often there's a parent speech, and then the end of the evening, it's often the thank you speech, at least in the experience of the weddings that I've been to in Canada here. That is typically the format. I want to be real with one thing right off the hop, and that is, as a bride and a groom, you have a lot of things going on that day. Your mind is full. You have so many guests in town that you want to talk to, you want to experience the day with. You're probably getting taken away to do photos, which takes up a big chunk of the day. You've got to think about your wedding vows. Maybe you have a first dance that you've practiced. There is so much going through your mind, and often the thank you speech, it might not be at the top of the list of the thing that you are prepared for because you are truly planning an entire event for your special day. So it's understandable that you don't have a lot of time. I'm creating this video with the assumption that you don't have a ton of time to put into practicing this thank you speech over and over and over. With that said, my first tip, and it actually goes against some of the other advice I give for other speeches, but my tip for this one is to write it down. Write down your wedding speech, maybe not verbatim, but at least write down all of the individuals specifically that you're hoping to thank, and maybe a line or two in each paragraph of things that you really want to say to that person or that you don't want to forget to mention. A wedding thank you speech is a bit different than other speeches where maybe you're telling stories or it's mostly a humorous speech. Wedding thank you speeches are all about acknowledging those people who have gone above and beyond to make your special day what it was. And you want to ensure that you give them that public appreciation so that they can feel the love and that you can truly express to them how much you appreciate those individuals. Now, when I say write down your speech, I don't suggest that you have to stand there in front of the crowd and read verbatim everything that you've written down on that piece of paper. I still think it's great if you can set that paper to the side and only briefly reference it from time to time. But the reason it's important to write it down is because with so much going on in that day, so much on your mind, it's really important to acknowledge all of those people who have made an impact on your big day. That way you have that crutch, you have that security blanket of if you freeze up, if you forget because you're so overwhelmed on your wedding day, you can refer to your piece of paper and right there you have written down in point form or however you take your notes, all of the individuals that you want to acknowledge. The second tip I have is to decide on the dynamic. You and your partner, however you want to deliver that speech, that is up to you. Perhaps one of you is the more confident public speaker and would rather do the lion's share of the speech that's totally fine. Or maybe it's the other individual, or maybe you want to alternate back and forth. That can work as well, but decide early on what that dynamic, how much of the speech each of you is going to say, and how you're going to break that down. Is it going to alternate people who you're thanking? However you think it should work, it's completely up to you. With that said, even if one of you is the more confident public speaker, I still encourage that other individual, even if it's hard for him or her, still speak up and say a few words. Maybe it's that person's own parents that they want to thank. It should probably come from that person. Or maybe it's the wedding party members on his or her side that he or she wants to acknowledge. In that case, absolutely, make sure that you're involving both of you to some degree. Some couples go up there, one person grabs the mic and says the whole thing. That's okay if you go with that dynamic, and it can still be fine, but I really encourage that other person who's maybe a little more shy still say a few words, even if it's only twice or three times throughout the speech, and acknowledge those individuals who are really close or important to you. My third tip is that it can still be creative. A wedding thank you speech is pretty formulaic in the sense of your purpose really is to acknowledge all of these different people. With that said, you can still add creativity to your thank you speech without overdoing it though, because this is a little bit different than a speech you deliver such as a toast to a bride or a groom, because again, you want to really focus on the individuals who you're thanking. But with that said, there's a couple things you can do. One is to inject humor, and I encourage that because at any public speaking opportunity, the quicker that you can get the audience to laugh, it's going to relax them and it's going to relax you as the public speaker. And those are the most entertaining speeches as well. But don't turn your speech into a big joke fest or anything like that, because again, this is about thanking the important individuals who contributed to your wedding. But by adding in a couple of lines here and there that get the audience chuckling, that you know will work, especially early in the speech, that's a nice little inclusion that is going to add to your speech and it's going to make it more memorable. Another way you can make your speech creative is by coming full circle. So maybe there's something you reference early on and then you deliver all of your thank yous throughout the speech, and then at the end you reference again that early thing that you mentioned right at the top of the speech, and you mention it at the end, and it just feels like it came together really nicely. So there's all of these different elements that you can inject with your wedding speech, but remember, you don't want to overdo it on the creativity side. Don't forget the purpose of a wedding speech, a wedding thank you speech. It is to thank the important individuals, and there's probably a lot of people that you want to thank, so you want to ensure that that speech isn't too long, that you've added all of these stories and creativity. No, remember your purpose, but still inject a little bit of creativity to make that a unique and memorable speech. A final tip I have for the bride, groom, wedding thank you speech is to still, as much as possible, practice. Now, I started this video by talking about how little time you probably have in planning a wedding to practice your wedding thank you speech. There's so many things on your mind, but whatever time you do have, still dedicate that to practicing, because the more you practice, even, by the way, this might sound weird, but my favorite place to practice public speaking is in the shower or driving on my way to work. Those are the places where I've got a couple minutes to myself and I can go through the speech in my head, I can practice it. And by doing that, when you have little moments of time and running through the speech in your head, you'll be surprised how easy it will become on the day of, especially compared to if you just try to wing it and go off the top. That is much more difficult, but if you can go through this a few times in your head or even speaking out loud and practicing, that combination of the practice plus having the speech written out off to the side, you're going to be absolutely fine. And then the wedding thank you speech is just one of many things you're focused on that day, and you'll be prepared for all of these different things. If you were a bride or a groom who is preparing for your wedding and your wedding thank you speech watching this video, thank you so much for taking the time to watch it, and congratulations on getting married. I know for my wife and I, it was one of our best days ever. It was so much fun. It's going to be for you as well. If maybe you're not getting married, maybe you hope to get married one day and you're already thinking about your wedding thank you speech. Hey, you do you. Whatever your situation, consider subscribing to my channel. I would really appreciate it. Leave a comment below if this video helped you out. Otherwise, check out some of the other videos I've done on my YouTube channel, and congratulations once again.